Hi guys, so let's talk about week 6. We are going to wrap up poetry this week, and we're going to start drama, so reading a play. The reason that I do poetry before I do drama is because the drama we're going to do is Shakespeare, and so he writes his plays in poetry form, right? So they're in iambic pentameter. So you'll see, the things we've been talking about with poetry still apply to this drama because he does rhyme, or he does write it with a very specific rhyme scheme and meter. And so we'll talk a little bit about that while we take a look at Hamlet. But just so you can see week 6, and some of this, I know last week there was a lot to do. But that's just the nature of taking a class in 8 weeks. So this week, there are 2 prezzies to view. The first one is just an introduction to drama. So what do you need to know about drama? Talk about some of those key terms. Okay. And then there's also one that's on Hamlet then specifically. So what do you need to understand about Hamlet? Okay. I've tried to give you a lot of resources for Hamlet because I know some of you may have a lot of experience with Shakespeare. Some of you may have very little experience with Shakespeare. Some of you may feel really intimidated about reading Shakespeare. So I offer you lots and lots of resources to help you get through this, okay? So this week, the reading that you will then need to do is Act 1 of Hamlet. Your discussion board post will also be about that as well, okay? But as far as assignments, first, your poetry test will open Monday morning and is due by Tuesday night, okay? So there's, quite a bit going on there. So make sure that you get that poetry test done by Tuesday night, okay? You need to be reading your novel. We talked about that at the very beginning of the semester, that you have to also write a paper over a novel, and now it is time. So the thesis statement for that novel paper is due at the end of week 6, okay? So you've got all this week. By Sunday night, you need to turn in that analysis sheet, and I will try to get those graded and back to you as quickly as possible. Okay, so poetry test Tuesday, lit analysis worksheet on your novel is due Sunday. Also due on Sunday is the quiz on Hamlet Act 1, and your discussion board post, original post is due Thursday, and your replies due by Sunday, okay? So quite a bit to do this week because we're finishing up poetry and starting drama. So we're kind of in a transition week, so we're covering 2 different things. All right, so let's talk a little bit about what's happening inside of week 6. First, I gave you just a little overview of some things you want to make sure that you know for this test. What should you study? So I have that in there. There are 2 parts to the poetry test. One is multiple choice. The other is an essay part. Just because I like to give you a reason to watch these videos. I will tell you that one of the essay analysis sections on part 2 is a Shakespearean sonnet. So make sure that you know the parts of a sonnet, and maybe go back to week 5. There was a Shakespearean sonnet that you were asked to read as part of your reading for the week, so maybe review that. Because we're talking about novel analysis, by the way, this paper is exactly the same as your short story paper. Okay, so I'm working on getting those graded. I plan to have those to you early in week 6, so you have those to take a look at and know, anything you need to fix before you write this next paper. But just to remind you, you don't get to just pick any novel. There's a list of novels you may choose from. If you're on the Neosho campus, I have a copy of most of the novels on this list. So if you need one, feel free to stop by my office. I'm in Farber 139. Okay. If you're not on the Neosho campus and you are anywhere where there is a library, all of these books should be available in your library. So these are very, very common classic novels. So any decent library would have them. Okay. I posted the directions about how to make it a paper. what do you need to do for the novel paper, and some tips. So just to help you get started on that. Also, because we're starting Hamlet, I did want to show you that I'm going to put in a lot of resources for you to help you get through Hamlet. I will post graphics, I will post websites, all kinds of things to help you get through Hamlet. So you pick and choose what's helpful to you. One thing I have found is that there is a dramatic reading of Hamlet. So if you don't necessarily want to just read it, if you want to hear it, here is where you can find that. So if you would rather listen to it and follow along, you can do that. Just note that sometimes the version that they have in your textbook may have been put together by somebody who may have changed some things. So if it doesn't always read exactly correct, sometimes what editors do is try to clean up the language just a little bit. And I don't mean that it has bad language, but just to make it a little more modern for modern readers. Sorry. Okay. So if it doesn't read exactly the same in the audiobook as it does in your textbook, don't panic. That's actually pretty normal. Okay. I've included some clips from the Mel Gibson version of Hamlet, which, by the way, is the best version of Hamlet. And there are plenty. But I've given you 2 clips of some key parts of Hamlet. So there's, a little bit to help you get through the reading. So I'm here to help you with that. Anyway, so both of these are from Act 1, so hopefully that's helpful to you. And then the last thing is the Act 1 quiz. So you'll have a quiz over each act. This week we'll do Act 1. Next week we'll do Acts 2 and 3. And then we'll finish up with Acts 5 and 6, or 4 and 5, sorry. So hopefully this is helpful to you. I will continue to put resources in there. And of course, in the discussion board, mostly we're going to be talking about what's happening in this act. So just to help you get through the reading of it. One thing I do want to mention about Shakespeare is that you don't have to understand every word. That's okay. Because this is a play, the plot happens through dialogue. So if you're like, well, what is happening? Well, they're telling you what's happening, but they're telling you what's happening through their speech. Okay, so rather than getting narrative like you get in a book, the characters have to actually speak it out loud. So if you're unclear about what exactly is happening, maybe it's because you're expecting more narration. You're not going to get that in a play. So just know that dialogue is what drives the plot. So be paying attention to, especially when there's conversations between 2 characters, because that's where a lot of the plot happens. So this is all dialogue driven, which is pretty different than, short story or something like that. So just know that it's a little bit different, but you don't have to understand every single word. If there's a little bit you don't understand, that's okay. Make note of it, move on, read the rest, and then in the discussion board, ask us about the part you didn't understand. All right, and we'll help each other. So I've read Hamlet so many times. It's one of my favorite plays. So I can help you. If you have a question, just let me know. Post it in there. Post a couple lines in the discussion board. Post your reply and then say, by the way, I didn't understand these lines. What does this mean? And you're probably not alone. Some of this is very, very difficult. I will tell you that Hamlet is a thinker more than a doer. He thinks very, very deeply about life's big questions. And so keep that in mind, that a lot of times what he's doing is just pondering the big questions. Why am I here? What's my life's purpose? He has a lot of moral dilemmas to consider. And, what are the implications of the decisions that he has to make? And they're really hard decisions. So, he spends a lot of time talking to himself, considering the issues at hand. And so just understand that when Hamlet is talking to himself, a lot of times he's considering the big questions of life, which is what I love about this play, because, we're all trying to figure out the big questions of life. And so I appreciate Shakespeare through Hamlet giving his perspective on love, on duty to our parents, on revenge, on suicide, on relationships in general, on love, on regret and guilt. And so many issues that we deal with. Hamlet doesn't have direction in his life. He's very unclear as to what he should do and how he should do it. And so he's struggling through that. And I think a lot of people can also feel that as well. So I think Hamlet deals with a lot of the issues that we all deal with. So I hope you appreciate that.